So in my mind, there's a list of candidates who Florida should definitely take a look at. And then I think there's a list of candidates who would definitely say yes to Florida. And I'm interested in sort of where is that overlap. So Matt Rule of the Panthers, I think Florida would absolutely go take a look at. I don't think Matt Rule is going to give them time of day. Maybe I'll be wrong, but nobody I know thinks he wants to get back to college. I don't know how the Panthers are playing today. I've really been working on college football stuff, so I'm not watching the NFL right now, but I think he's probably pretty happy in the pros. Would Florida want James Franklin?
Yeah.
They lost their quarterback yesterday, and Penn State still managed to win in blowout fashion. Would Franklin want to go down to Florida?
Maybe.
But he also said yesterday in his press conference, he kind of hinted at
a big raise
signing a new extension. Yeah. What about Mario Cristobal? Right? If you're Florida, do you make this move because you get the feeling that Miami might be about to fire Manny Diaz and make a run at Cristobal? If you're Cristobal, do you want to be in the SEC? There were rumors last time that he thought the Saban playbook was too pervasive in the SEC when he was being looked at for the Auburn job, and thus turned it down. Allegedly, whatever. But would he want to go to the SEC East to fight Kirby? Or would he rather be at a Miami, even though it's not as good of a job resource-wise? It's also not, much less competition. What about Billy Napier? Napier right now has been linked like TCU and Virginia Tech. Do you go after Napier?
I think that you put him on the list. I mean, this is why,
yes, I think.
I think that this is why, if you're Florida, it's a really tough position because you've got your James Franklin and your Billy Napier. And I want to be very clear about this. I would give, and Bud, you mentioned this so many times, we're awful at grading hires. We shouldn't grade hires, but we do it because it creates incredible content that all of you click on when we say coaching grades. Boom, splash, we make money. I would give them both A's. I think that Billy Napier and James Franklin are both very, very good head coaches who, given the opportunity to take over a program like Florida, would be able to not necessarily hit the ceiling quickly, but would be able to at least very quickly turn the page from the previous era, be able to wash out some of the negativity that was surrounding the program. But those are two wildly different coaches in terms of experience because of what James Franklin's done at Vanderbilt in the SEC Power 5 job, then at Penn State, huge legacy job where you're dealing with a crazy fan base and also coming in after a little bit of a mess. Billy Napier didn't have to do that at Louisiana. I mean, this is a much more of a smaller sample size, but that is the variance for Florida in terms of how proven the coaches are that I think are in this candidate pool. And I just don't know how these dominoes are going to fall. Like if I'm James Franklin, of course I'm interested in talking to Florida and at least seeing what's up, because that's, one of the better jobs in all of college football. I'm trying to think about, what about Lane Kiffin?
This is interesting. I think Lane Kiffin would absolutely take it 100%. I mean, he has a ton of Florida ties, obviously, grew up, lived in Tampa for a while when his dad was the defensive coordinator, Monty Kiffin, of the Bucs. I don't know that Florida would seriously go after Lane Kiffin, and I'll give credit to Feldman and Staples of The Athletic, who have both kind of poo-pooed that notion on their podcasts recently. With Napier, I think it would be probably a solid hire. However, Franklin has done some things that Napier has not had to do. Franklin has shown that he can replace coordinators and evaluate position coaches and when they move on and make pretty good hires. And that is a skill we don't talk about a whole lot in coaching hire fire season, but that's pretty important, right? And Napier is a relatively green head coach. I think he's done a good job at Louisiana. I think he's recruited extremely well at Louisiana. He knows how to recruit in the SEC, as does James Franklin. However, I would note Louisiana oftentimes plays down to its competition. Now, their win-loss record looks really good this year, but a lot of times they don't really dominate people. And if you're recruiting at that level in that league, it makes me a little bit suspect, but obviously it's a totally different league. What would you say about, here's two more I'll throw at you, and I have no idea if they would take it or not, or if Florida, I'm pretty sure Florida would take the one, but maybe not the other. Do you want Luke Fickell? Do you want Lincoln Riley?
Yes.
Would Fickell go to the SEC?
No.
I kind of think not as well, but you never say never, right? Like I just
That's
don't
why
know.
This large span for Florida is so interesting.
Yeah.
Every time you put me in Scott Strickland's seat, I go, yeah.
He's making the hire, right? Because of the fundraising job he's done.
I would assume so. I mean, Scott Strickland, I've always viewed as someone who got that job because he has done well working his way up the, administrative ladder all along the way. I don't think you spend all this time in the industry, move from SEC job to SEC job just to show up at Florida and not get to make the hire. That doesn't sound right to me.
I agree. If the reports are true that Riley turned down LSU, which seems to be the notion out there, but nothing's done until it's done. We assume he would also turn down Florida?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm kind of on the same page with you there.
Yeah. I mean, that's Lincoln Riley dropped the old Barry Switzer line. It was the first time that the NFL came sniffing around Lincoln Riley. He said, those NFL jobs are great, but those NFL jobs, there's only, there are 32, and out of those 32, only, about 25 are all the same. He was like, you're at the University of Oklahoma. There's not many other jobs that are on this level. I mean, it's just.
Let's speak to that then. What about a guy who has coached at Florida and has coached at the University of Oklahoma? What if Bob Stoops wants to get back in the game?
I would think that would be uninspiring to someone who is hoping that Florida is going to be closing the gap with Georgia. But how about this?
What is brother?
I don't think Bob Stoops closes the gap with Georgia. I think Bob Stoops prevents you from being 5-6 on November 21st again.
Yeah, that's probably fair. What about Mark Stoops? How far down is he on that list for Florida? He's competent, does a really good job there at Kentucky.
To your point about experience, you maybe take Mark. You maybe power rank Mark ahead of Napier just based on experience.
Yeah, I think you power rank Napier on upside, but maybe Mark on experience more. And then finally, I don't know how the Jaguars are doing today.
Urban.
Is there any shot?
Yes.
Is that the first call you make?
No, I think Urban might have. If Urban's actually interested, then he's lit the smoke signal already.
You've already made the call. Okay. He made the call. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the second that he saw his good friend Dan Mullen spiraling out of control, Urban might have. Listen, I don't think it's going to happen. What odds would I need to bet them? I mean, it would need to be UConn money line kind of odds for me to be betting on Urban Meyer wanting to jump into the University of Florida at a time when the program is already in the midst of a culture issue. I was on CBS Sports HQ discussing this breaking news with Barrett Sallee earlier. He mentioned something that I think is interesting. He said Oregon losing set this domino off, because if Oregon has a serious shot at the college football playoff, then Cristobal might be trying to keep everyone at a distance. But now that Oregon is out of the college football playoff, the timetable for when Mario Cristobal might leave Oregon has been sped up. You don't get Mario Cristobal if you have to wait for the Ducks to finish their college football playoff semifinal game on December 31st. You might be able to get him after the Pac-12 championship game, now that they are likely out of playoff contention.
So I would kind of agree with that, but I would also posit this. If we can agree that this recruiting class is toast anyway, what's the harm in waiting?
I think there's still staff hire harm and wait. I think that everything that time is lost is harm. I think that you want to get your new head coach in as soon as possible to shut the door on the season that was, turn the page, and get the program moving forward. I think that let's see, if it's December 4th is the Saturday, I think the Pac-12 championship game is on Friday night, the 3rd. Let's say you can introduce them on the 5th or the 6th being that Monday. The difference between December 6th and January 2nd feels huge.
I just think you're not going to pick up any recruits in that time frame anyway, I don't think. Why not just go heavily portal and say, hey, we need to build this thing from the ground up? I don't know. It's an interesting thought, because if you don't fill that position by the early signing period, and Cristobal was in the playoff,
then
it's pretty obvious that it's him, unless you think you're going to pull Nick Kirby or Ryan Day, or assuming that chalk holds. And I kind of doubt that.
What about do you think that any other? All right, so you mentioned, do you think Manny Diaz? What about is Steve Sarkisian okay? At this point, I'm really willing to entertain all options for what's going to happen in this coaching carousel because of how many jobs open so early in the season. The fact that we're still here at November 21st and we've got these big high profile ones, the dominoes are going to create some movement. I don't think that any of my prior notions about what would or wouldn't warrant a premature fire, I think that's all out the window. I think that everyone feels really emboldened that in this time of uncertainty, that if you're not happy with the direction of your program and you can gather together the funds, then just go ahead and make a move.
Chip, I agree with that. I also think there's a bit of a lack of obvious candidates out there for some of these jobs. The salary inflation in this sport at the sort of mid to upper mid level has made it to where guys are pickier about jumping, right? Louisiana came up with a couple million to pay Billy Napier. In like 20 years ago, he could not have turned down South Carolina and Auburn last year. He would not have had that luxury. The guys have more leverage now because every program is making so much more money. And we're not yet seeing the very, very, very top schools say, hey, here's 15, right? They're not doubling up these guys anymore from making from 4 to 8 very often. So a lot of times these guys are happy to stay where they are, and it makes the candidate pool a little bit tougher. Like Fickle 20 years ago would have been gone after last year. But this year, he's still here. And he can kind of pick where he wants to go, or maybe he'll just stay at Cincinnati. Who knows? As far as your question about Texas, I really have no idea. We talked about this on last night's Instant Reaction show. Of course, always watch Cover 3 on Saturday night. You know where you need to be. If Texas brought in Sarkisian as a guy that could take them from 9 wins to a national title, but now they found out they actually have a total rebuild, they need to reconsider if he is the guy to do that complete rebuild. And I don't know if he is or not. That'll be up to Texas